Hello. What is the other desktop audio coming from? Hello. What is the other? What is coming out
audio?
of the desktop audio? Hello. What do you know? What is the other? What is It's the music. I paused the music. Hello. What do you know? What is the other? What is The music. I paused the music. Hello. What do you know? Oh. It's been overlapping. Oh no, I didn't see anyone say anything. My bad. I had the stream open and I do see it in the Twitch chat. My bad. I didn't have Okay. It's fixed. Unmute. Anyways, hello guys. Sorry about the echo there. We are live today discussing the demise of Square Enix. I'm just kidding. At least that's what the internet has been kind of like discussing recently. God, I can't talk. Give me a second to get myself together. It's always like this when I first get on stream. Whenever I first get on stream, I'm always like tripping over my words and bumbling to say stuff. And then like, as I start talking, I like warm up. Yeah, I literally haven't talked to another human being today. I opened my lips. They probably have protein bar on them. That's what happened to my lips. Because I was wolfing down a protein bar to hit my macros. I'm also on like a small boy cut right now. Me and my girlfriend are going to EDC later this month, and so I wanted to make sure that I'm like kind of in like a lower body fat percentage because I'm going to be wearing like some see-through mesh type things, and so you're going to be able to see my body, and so my body fat percentage needs to be on point. Hey Night Sky, this is Stefan from Twitter. Love your content and cool personality. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. You're the best, man. So anyway, I just want to talk to you guys and explain that it's not doom and gloom. I kind of already touched on this in my video, but I really wanted to talk more about it at length here on stream. In part because there was, some details that I always forget in video. And secondly, I just enjoy engaging with you guys on this stuff. Like, it's the most fun for me personally whenever, we can chat like this. And we used to do chatting streams like this all the time. I'm sorry that they don't happen as frequently as they used to. I've been wanting to bring them back. And this is yet another attempt at making this a semi-regular thing. Even if we don't have a guest on, it can just be me bumbling, foaming at the mouth about stuff. You guys like that, right? You guys like me foaming at the mouth about absolutely nothing, right? I hope so, because that's most of what this job entails, is me giving terrible opinions about stuff. Something I don't think Western Square Enix fans realize is that if it ever came down to it, SE would drop and cancel an FF project to save a Dragon Quest. I mean, Dragon Quest is probably more liable at this point than Final Fantasy, right? Like, Final Fantasy used to be like a bigger deal, but I don't know if that's like really the case anymore after especially after like 11's success. 11 was really huge. Dragon Quest is super consistent, especially in Japan, right? And we haven't had a platform announcement for Dragon Quest 12, but I'm willing to bet Dragon Quest 12 is coming to Switch 2. It's going to be Switch 2 and PS5. I think it would be very ironic if Dragon Quest 12 outsold like FF7 and 16 as well. Like, right? Like, wouldn't that be like such like a wake up call moment? I think that would flip like everything on its head, right? If Dragon Quest 12 was like, if it outsold those games. And it's kind of positioned too. It's kind of like, it's not impossible for Dragon Quest 12 to do that, by the way. Because again, Dragon Quest 11 sold really fucking well. Like, really, really well. Are you going to get into Dragon Quest, right? I really liked 11. So, like, my goal was to like get knee deep in the Dragon Quest before 12 came out, and it looks like I'm gonna have some time to do that. So, yes, I'm gonna become a Dragon Quest guy, like hardcore, before 12, to the point of where I can make Dragon Quest videos. Pretty interesting because I think Dragon Quest is really cool. I've always had like a passing interest in Thank you for the $2 super chat, by the way. But yeah, and Crossy here is gonna help guide me through my Dragon Quest journey, which I'm sure he'll be more than happy to do. Again, nice guy there. Dragon Quest Pokemon Go ripoff that is Japan exclusive, made over $2 billion in revenue. Yeah, in just Japan. Yeah, and that's like another thing too about like Dragon Quest, right? Is that Dragon Quest is like really good domestically, but I think what was so crucial about Dragon Quest XI in particular is that Dragon Quest XI showed how viable Dragon Quest can be in the West, right? Because that was always the thing about Dragon Quest, is that everyone was like, Dragon Quest is just a Japan thing. It's not a Western thing. And for a long time, I think that was largely true. But I think when like 11 came over here, that was like not that true anymore. And people really started to like 11 a lot. Does 11 run all right on PS5? Oh, dude, yeah. I mean, 11 runs on a Switch, which is like a fucking toaster. Any platform you can get Dragon Quest 11 on is gonna run pretty good. Yeah, it'll run on anything. Like, you can run it on PC, like even a lower end PC, a Steam Deck, a Switch. It'll run good on anything, dude. Yeah, they downgraded the graphics, unfortunately, for 11S, which means that like the best version of Dragon Quest has the worst graphics, which sucks so much. That won't be a big issue for Dragon Quest 12, right? Because they're going to be like simul developing them. And so the PS5 version of Dragon Quest 12 probably won't be like as gimped to run on Switch 2. I'm assuming that Dragon Quest 12 is Switch 2, right? Like, I think it'd be crazy if that thing came out and it was like Switch 1. I wouldn't want it to be Switch 1 only. I would want it to be Switch 2 and PS5, so that the PS5 version isn't held back as much. But it's 30, I know, on PS5, but I don't mind assuming motion blur isn't too crazy. If that's like a concern, I would get it on like PC. In fact, I would say, Repodusky, like if you could get it on PC, and the reason is because not only do you have all the benefits of PC, but also if you have a Steam Deck, the fact that you can like be portable with that game and play it at home is the only thing that's going to actually let you get through that fucking 1 trillion hour experience. So I would say if you could get it on Steam, that would be the best way. Fun fact, DQ11 was the first ever confirmed game for Nintendo Switch back when it was called the NX. Oh, wow, that's crazy. Okay, so now it makes sense for Dragon Quest 12 to also do that. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing, right? Dragon Quest is growing. Nier is growing incredibly well, guys. Like Nier Automata, right? Fucking 8 million units sold. If you would have told me back in the day that niche Nier would do more numbers than Final Fantasy VII Remake, I would have called you a liar. I would have said you are not from the future. You are not a time traveler. Nier. Do you guys know it? Okay, so I didn't play Replicant when it first came out, or Gestalt, like kind of the version that we got here with Papa Nier. I didn't play the first Nier when it came out. So I remember E3. Which E3 was it? 2015? 16? It was the same year, I think, that like Remake got announced. That they announced Nier Automata. And I saw the first trailer for Automata at E3. And my thought was, Nier? Isn't that the game that sold like 20 copies? They're making a sequel to that? That was my first reaction, right? Like, I was like, does anyone care? I was so wrong. Because it turned out I cared. I cared more probably than many. I cared a lot. But I didn't know that at the time. I just was like, dude, like 5 people played the first game. Dude, Lons the Master, thank you so much for the super chat. Do you think Nier and KH stand in terms of upside moving forward? Does Dawn Trail continue to crush? That's a great question. So, Nier is like, I cannot believe that Square Enix has not made a Nier follow-up, right? Like, do you guys think about how crazy it is? The fact that we are getting Nier Automata-inspired games, and we haven't gotten the new Nier yet from Square, right? Like, it's actually kind of crazy how much money they're missing out on by not producing more Nier. I think that's just, like, ridiculous. So yeah, Nier is like a franchise that Square should be going crazy on, like crazy ham on. I think that they're missing opportunities by not putting out a third Nier and leveraging Yoko Taro as much as they possibly can. Does KH is in like a very weird place right now. I actually am not really sure what's going on with KH, because KH has had like a long period of like silence. So I think with KH, like KH3 was in like a really good place. It's like the fastest selling. And the only thing about KH though is that 3 was also, I know that if you go deep into the Kingdom Hearts community, people love 3. There's people in there like deep in like the KH community to tell you 3 is the best one. But I think that if you get outside of the KH community and you go into like the mainstream, like casual Kingdom Hearts enjoyer, I think a lot of them did not like 3 actually. So, I don't know how that will affect 4, right? And the only reason I say that is because 3 came after like this giant buildup of anticipation. And then a lot of people felt let down by the base game. So I don't know. I don't know what KH4 is going to do. Like it's actually like a very big mystery to me. KH4 could actually end up doing really well. I think it's really, KH4 might honestly depend on, I don't think people are burned by KH quite in the same way that they have been with like a lot of like recent Final Fantasy releases. So I think that KH4 could still come out, even despite like how many may have felt about KH3. Because I like, my hunch is that KH4 is going to be the best KH, like as good as 2 at least. I know that's like a huge tall order. That's my hunch. There's a couple of reasons that I think that, but I think that KH4 will be placed next to 2 in terms of like how much people like it. So I don't know. I don't know what KH4 is. I know KH4 is going to be profitable. That's for sure. It's going to do numbers. I don't know if it'll be bigger than 3, right? Like sales wise, does KH4 be bigger than 3? I think that like, in my opinion, how you make Kingdom Hearts 4 bigger than 3 is that you get more people into Kingdom Hearts, right? Like I think that's almost the objective way to make KH bigger. So I guess you make KH4 like the title that people can hop into. But every time I say that, KH fans like crucify me. Like they crucify me every time I say that. But I'm like, don't you guys want the series to grow? They're like, no, start at the first one. But I'm like, okay, like God of War 2018 sold 23 million units, right? This is how you know I'm a nerd, by the way, is that like I remember like all these sales numbers, but I guess like from doing this work, I had to constantly make these points over and over again, so I memorized this. But God of War 2018 sold like 23 million units, right? God of War 1 through 3 sold about 5 million units each. That is to say, most people who played God of War 2018 did not play the Greek saga. Period. Most people were pretty much new to God of War. I don't even think that you actually need to play the Greek saga, though, to really get Neo God of War. It's not a requirement. You just need to know the basic lore. You can figure out everything you need to know about God of War in like an hour. And then that's like enough to really understand God of War 2018. That's it. 2018 and Ragnarok are like their own complete story. That you just need to know Kratos was like a bad guy, a bad guy, not like a bad guy, but he did a lot of regrettable things. He did a lot of bad things, and he's trying to change his ways, and that is like literally the premise of the story. And yeah, Greek Saga is good though. Yeah, I'm not saying you should definitely play the Greek Saga for sure. But what I'm trying to say is that if the Norse saga had a thing where the Norse saga was like, you cannot access it if you haven't played the Greek saga, like we're not even trying, then like it wouldn't have had a 4x, almost 5x, explosion from the previous game, right? And so, again, I know Kingdom Hearts fans, they don't like to hear that. They hate when I say that, but I'm just like, just speaking like in terms of how this works. Then yeah, Miss, thank you for the tier 1. Skipping work because I'm sick. Hope streams went well, King. Thank you. You can sum up the Greek saga as angry man gets tricked by the gods, so it kills them all. Yeah, it's not like a really hard story to sum up, and yeah, it's a lot more. There's a lot more nuance to it than that. But like, if you really just want to get someone into it, that's like all the like basic information that they need to know, right? Like you can watch a 15 or 20 minute video, and then that's it. And then I guess to top your question off about Dawn Trail is that I think Dawn Trail will do really good. Dawn Trail is also kind of a question mark for me because I'm kind of curious what Dawn Trail is going to do in terms of new players into FF14. So the graphics update, that stuff might help. But anyway, yes. Thank you again, Lance Semester. But yeah, so it's really easy to get into those, and so I do think that continuing to make titles accessible story-wise is like also possible while not continuing, well, also continuing the story threads, right? Because again, that's what God of War does. Like if you know the Greek saga and you know how those story threads continue, it makes the Norse saga even better. But like, it's not like if you don't know any of those threads that like it's like get fucked. The only part of that I think you might be like get fucked is like Valhalla, right? Like Valhalla is kind of like one for like the more hardcore God of War fans, but like even then I think that Valhalla kind of tells its story in a way that like if you didn't play the Greek saga, like Kratos still kind of goes through it and explains what happened in such a way that makes it accessible. So I kind of hope that Kingdom Hearts 4 is that. KH4 is meant to be the beginning of a new story saga anyways, right? So it may as well drop as much baggage from the Xehanort saga as possible. It is a lot to expect new players to play everything in a 20-year series to get into the new game. Right, and I feel like... Sorry, that didn't mean to turn this into a KH stream. But I do want to touch on that before we change topics. Because I really do agree And actually, why do I have these headphones on? Because we're not listening to anything. But I really do agree on that point. And I really do think that it totally is not necessary, right? Like, and I get it. People do want every detail to matter. And I think that it should continue to matter. But I also think that, it's not really necessary to make people play everything, right? And people only think about accessibility in terms of like, oh, you can access all the games on one platform. But that doesn't mean, that it's accessible. If I had to play like, a bunch of remasters of PS2 and PSP games and watch, several films worth of cutscenes from the games that didn't get remade, then it's not accessible to me, right? Like I know that like to some people they say, oh, it's lazy, right? But like a lot of people just want to pick up the new thing and play the new thing. You have to make this as low hanging of a fruit for people as humanly possible, right? I understand like that fandom's like position on like, oh, the story's so masterful and interconnected and all that other stuff, but I'm like, yeah, but like new people don't care. They don't care. They don't know why they should care, right? You have to give them something to care about. So, no, Kino, you did the right thing to ban. That was a bot. But yeah, that's the problem. Is that there is no reason to. They need to give people a reason to care. I think that's my thing. Because why would someone coming in want to do that? Why would someone? I was suggesting Kingdom Hearts 1 remake and Twitter almost killed me. Actually, that's actually like a very funny thing because people are very like anti like KH1 remake, but I'm like, dude, you guys are like hoping for like PS3 games to get remade, right? People are out there hoping for like PS3 games and PS4 games to get remade. I don't think that like KH1 remake would actually be that off of the table, honestly. But yeah, so I feel like with Yakuza has that issue. You really shouldn't skip any of it to get the full experience of Infinite Wealth in 7. So some series, it can just be very difficult, right? But I think that 7 did a lot to make it a little bit more accessible. But yeah, you still won't get like a ton of stuff. But even then though, right? Like 7 was a soft reboot for Like a Dragon. And guess what? It was the highest selling Like a Dragon game up to that point. So I still think that there's a ton of validity in the idea of making something super accessible. I hate using the word accessible because sometimes I know it can feel like dumbing things down, especially for like longtime series fans, right? But it's what's hard about like a long continuing video game narrative, right? It's the nature of doing things in parts. Which is actually kind of a good segue for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Because when we talk about doing things in parts, do I still have that tweet pulled up? Holy fuck, I don't. Why? How did I mean, I'll pull it up in a second, actually. Oh, wait, here we go. I'll talk about it in a second. But do you guys remember, like, back in, like, the glory days of YouTube? And in those days, they would have video series, and those video series would be uploaded in parts. And we would have different parts, and it would be like, such and such video part 1. You guys know what I'm talking about? Like, everything would be in like people would do video series and they would label it part 1, part 2. Have you guys noticed that like that has disappeared from the YouTube meta, that no one labels things parts anymore. In fact, one thing I've even done myself is that I've actually made like different things, like different topics on like a game, and instead of releasing it all in one video, I kind of like are like, yeah, I'll do videos in multiple parts too, actually, but you won't actually know that they're videos in multiple parts. They'll because I won't label it part 1 and part 2, and I'll make the video self-contained, and I'll be like, hey, by the way, be sure to like reference this other video. And the reason that the part meta disappeared from YouTube is because the moment something was labeled part 2, the viewership drop off was substantial. Like substantial. Because people thought, oh, I didn't watch part 1. So I can't watch part 2. Right? And so that was always like this huge thing that people felt nervous about whenever they were doing the parts, and so eventually parts disappeared. You're describing the death of Let's Play channels. Right. And actually the better meta for like labeling like a playthrough actually would be like reacting to this part of the story. Right? So actually, when I did my Shadowbringers Let's Play, which actually performed pretty well on YouTube, but when I did my Shadowbringers Let's Play, there were no parts, right? So I didn't label Shadowbringers Playthrough Part 1. I labeled it like reacting to Vothri. The Vothri fight. Right? Or reacting to the end of Shadowbringers. And that's part of why it did well, right? And then two reasons why. Because one, actually telling people what it is better. 3, someone may just literally be searching for ending reactions or searching for Vothri reactions or something like that. And so you're actually better search engine optimized whenever you have like what the video is actually fucking about. And they don't need to have watched your entire playthrough to know what the thing is about, right? They just need to know that, like, oh, hey, this guy's reacting to the fucking Vothri fight. Let's go. I want to watch that, right? So yeah, the parts meta has like disappeared, and that's kind of why numbering is tough. Sounds like FF games should abandon the numbering altogether. I mean, that's something that Yoshi P has talked about, and I feel is tough because it's so part of FF's identity, but reason why even movies don't use parts anymore, people are lazy, right? When people hear part, they get tired, right? And so it's tough. Subscribe to you because I love your insight on FF7 Rebirth after your video at Max. Oh, thank you so much, John Ford. Appreciate that. Final Fantasy should rebrand to being the title to being the genre like Souls, and the key consistent factor should be the active ATB or semi-evolution of that system in a zone-based open world. I'm at a point where I don't really disagree with that, because I do think that the ATB system that they introduced in Remake is a system that you can go anywhere with. In the same way that Soulsborne is like a system that you can go anywhere with, right? You can make Bloodborne, you can make Stellar Blade, you can make Elden Ring, and they're all different games, but they're all within that same genre. I feel like we bring this up every stream because it's relevant every stream. It is relevant every stream. Like, because, and one reason I'm such an evangelist of that system is because it's the only system I feel like only Square Enix has, right? That's an incredibly powerful value proposition, right? Like only Square Enix has that system. With FF dropping numbers, it could go the midway point that Dragon Quest has. Zelda has no numbers and uses subtitles instead, like Ocarina of Time or Tears of the Kingdom. Dragon Quest uses numbers and subtitles, like the 8 Journey of the Cursed King or 4 The Chapters of the Chosen. FF could do similar or go full Zelda. Yeah, no, I agree. But yeah, I'm not firmly stating either way with that. By the way, guys, I'm not saying like FF should definitely drop numbers or not. I'm just saying like with parts and stuff in particular, there's always drop off like one part to the next. And so that is something to be aware of when talking about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. So I'll pull this up and we'll talk about it. We'll talk about this real quick, because this is pretty interesting, I think. If I could fucking let me just what the fuck? Bro. What the fuck? Let me I'm gonna fix this window real quick. That we can I not make this? I'm like, dog, I hate OBS like with a passion. Why not just let me all these layers and like stuff, and now my background is like tacky and all this other, you know, like, come on now, dog. Come on now. Okay. Here we go. So we got some information here that talks about the best-selling games on PlayStation platforms in the US, right? And this is for March, and it looks like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth here in March was at number 6. And then if we wait, hold on, let me go back to the top of the thread here. Okay, wait, there wasn't anything at the top, I don't think. So yeah, it was number 7 actually for March. Right? But March also doesn't include the first 4 days of sales, so I wouldn't really take too much stock in that. But this one is kind of the one that's a little bit more telling. And this one says basically that it was the 4th best-selling game of the year. So that's pretty cool. That's really good. It was beat out by Dragon's Dogma 2, though, which is actually, you know, kind of somewhat surprising to me. I suppose the reason that I do find it surprising, you know, is that I guess I didn't think that Dragon's Dogma 2 was going to come out swinging harder than, like, you know, Final Fantasy VII. Again, that's like, you told me that years ago, I would have been like, what? Where is the thumbnail image from? It's from a promotional image of Crisis Core Reunion. It's actually an old thumbnail that I reused. I'm not gonna lie to you. I was like, I don't want to remake a thumbnail for a stream, but YouTube requires you have a thumbnail for your stream. So I was like, okay, I'll make a thumbnail. I'll just take an old thumbnail and just... Anyway, so that's not too bad. But if we go down here, so Dragon's Dogma 2 debuted as the best-selling game of March and the 3rd best-selling game of 2024 year-to-date. With just 1 month in the market, Dragon's Dogma 2 has already surpassed the life-to-date track dollar sales of Dragon's Dogma and Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen combined. Helldivers 2 remains the best-selling premium game 2024 year-to-date after placing 2nd in March. Helldivers 2 ranks 7th in lifetime US dollar sales for Sony published titles after just 2 months in market. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth remained the 4th best-selling game of 2024 year-to-date, despite falling 5 spots in monthly rankings to 7th in March after placing 2nd in February. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth currently sits 14th across all Final Fantasy releases in lifetime dollar sales in the US market. Final Fantasy 15 first of all time, followed by Final Fantasy VII Remake and the original Final Fantasy VII. Now, this actually had a lot of people curious. It also had me a little bit confused at first too, because I was like, wait, Final Fantasy VII Remake did like the most in cash dollar sales? Really? But actually, that makes a lot of sense. The big reason is actually that the price of games has gone up. And so, like Final Fantasy VII OG, when it first came out, was, like $50. And on top of which, the sales and the fact that Final Fantasy OG sales also include the number of times that Final Fantasy VII OG was re-released. And a lot of times, FF7 OG, was on sale on mobile for like, $10, $16. Also, too, collector's editions is another thing. So that makes sense. So, yeah, despite the fact that those games sell more, FF7 OG was why the term AAA exists, because primarily how much it cost to make at the time. Yeah, FF7 OG is largely attributed to the creation of AAA games, right? Which is actually kind of strange to think about, right? Because that's basically to say we would not have The Last of Us if we didn't have Final Fantasy VII. That is bizarre, right? But that is kind of the truth of the situation. So, yeah, it's strange, right? So, also too, I mean, deluxe editions and collector's editions are definitely what make this more profitable than just selling you the game, and then the price of games have gone up. So, yeah, at first this kind of confused me, but then I remembered that I paid $300 for Final Fantasy 15 Ultimate Collector's Edition. Right? And if you do the math on that, 300 divided by 60, that's basically the equivalent of everyone who bought a collector's edition buying 5 copies of the game. So, yeah. And they didn't really have collector's editions in this way back on PS1. So, and then the average person also bought a deluxe edition, right? The average fan probably didn't spend $60 on Remake. They probably spent $90 getting the deluxe steelbook edition. So that is why the actual dollars is bigger on the more recent titles, even actually despite them not selling as much. So that's crazy. But the kind of damning part in this is that Rebirth currently is ranked 14th across all releases. That's pretty bad. Right? Like, it's almost like saying, like, there was a joke me and my friends had, like, whenever, like back in the day, like whenever a Final Fantasy game was kind of mid, we'd say, oh yeah, it's definitely like a top 10 Final Fantasy. Like a top 15 Final Fantasy, right? Which at first sounds like, oh, okay, it's like really top. It's like, wait, there's only 15. Yeah, this isn't particularly, this ain't what you want to see. This is not what you want to see, man. 14th across all, but it's also lifetime too, right? We're comparing lifetime, and so it's really worth noting that lifetime has only been 2 months. So we're also comparing that to games that have been out for years. So I won't say that that's bad, but it's definitely not the time that Dragon's Dogma 2 is having, where Dragon's Dogma 2 has already surpassed the sales of the life-to-date track dollar sales of Dragon's Dogma and Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen. Yeah. So Dragon's Dogma 2 is having a better time at the party right now. That's for sure. Anyway, I promise you this is not a doomer stream. We're getting to the good part, the hope, the why this is like not terrible. Let me see. I thought he said some more stuff about Final Fantasy. I thought he did. I might have been mistaken. I guess I was mistaken. But that is rough. Yeah, Final Fantasy VII. Yeah. Anyway, it's pretty rough. Yeah, so what do we do? Right? Like, where do we go from here? What is the solution for Square? Because this shit is kind of rough. It kind of is. Like, let's just, Square, however, announced yesterday, and I did a video on this, talking about how, they canceled $140 million worth of games. He said even by adding the twin packs, it's still in the same place. Damn. So Square Enix canceled $140 million worth of games yesterday. And the way this was spun was because essentially, oh my god, Square Enix has no idea what they're doing. They're canceling games. This must be because Rebirth didn't sell well and all this other stuff that people have been saying. I don't think that's the case about why this is happening. Now, we are going to hear something about Rebirth sales later this month, because I think we're going to get the Q1 investor report. Someone told me it happens on like May 13th, I think, is when it drops. I'm not sure. I have to go and check the date again, but that is when it's going to drop. And we're going to get a lot more information about the sales. Square Enix will talk about whether it met expectations or not, and those sorts of things. So we'll be finding that out in greater details, and they'll be talking about their losses and all that other kind of stuff. So there'll definitely be a video about that. It's going to be really interesting to see. But that being said, I don't think the $140 million of games being canceled is actually a bad thing. And I know that sounds crazy, because how can it not be, right? Those are a lot of games. Now, first of all, I'm gonna be upfront. We probably lost some good shit in that $140 million worth of games. There probably was like a really good game in there that we all would have loved. That is not going to see the light of day anymore. We lost something good. That is probably inevitable. However, we also probably lost another Various Day Life, or another Valkyrie Elysium, or another, one of these games that Square Enix was just pumping and dumping. I remember it was sometime in 2022 where Square Enix had released what was it, 3 games in the span of a week or something like that, and none of them had any marketing. They were just dumped out There was no attempt made to like push those games out. And then the games come out, and you know, I support double A games, but they still felt underfunded, even for double A games, right? They still felt tremendously underfunded. And, if you go through that list of games, how many of them actually got an 8 out of 10 on Metacritic, like an 80%? Most of them did not get an 80%. Most of them were like low 70s or less. Most of them were low 70s or less. So not a single one of them was like on the green in Metacritic. Most of them were in the yellow, right? Most of them had mixed reception. So, and not to harp on like Metascores or anything like that, but I do kind of think for projects that aren't like, that don't have a big name behind them, like Final Fantasy or something like that, you kind of do need to come out with like a really good game that critics will like, upvote, in order for people who aren't really familiarized with the IP to want to give it a chance, right? To pay full price for it. And so, yeah, dude, these games, they bombed, like bomb after bomb after bomb. And honestly, even on their AAA side of things, we had Forspoken, we had Babylon's Fall, we had Avengers, Square Enix has put out so many of these games. And to be honest, it has felt like there has not been enough quality control on these titles. It feels like they're just putting things out, And so I think this gives me some faith that there is going to be some quality control going forward. And that's what Kiryu seems to be explaining here, is that they want to put their resources behind the titles that they think are their absolute best. And I think that's awesome. I think that's what they need to focus on. And yeah, I think that, again, I'm a huge fan of AA games. I think that we need more AA games. I think AA games going away is like one of the biggest issues, pressing the industry right now, is because there should be a thing that exists between an indie and a AAA game. And currently there isn't. Not in a strong way anymore, where it's just like, I don't think Final Fantasy VII Remake is one of the victims either. Like, a lot of people are worried about FF9 Remake. It has been a while. I don't think that we need to be worried about FF9 Remake. I don't think that FF Tactics Remaster or Remake, whichever it's going to be, I don't think that's a concern either. Again, I think it's more like Various Daylife 2 or something. I think that's the type of stuff that got canceled. I don't think it's Dragon Quest 3 HD 2D or any of that stuff. Like, I don't think you guys have to worry about that stuff. In fact, I don't think it's anything announced either, for the most part. Babylon's and Avenger definitely have done more damage than people realize. We also don't know how much games like the Remake trilogy are actually costing of people account for the entire dev time. Going back to CyberConnect 2, is that being returned with sales? We are seeing sales we know will decrease with each new entry because, as we talked about before, consumers tire of parts or sequel fatigue. I really do think, because Kitase and Nomura talked about this recently in the interview in the Ultimania. They talked about it once before too, where they considered making Remake 2 parts instead of 3. And in hindsight, I think the 2 parts would have been the kind of better move, right? I feel like if you know, if the first part was more like Rebirth and it came out back in 2020, I feel like it would have made a bigger impact for sure. But, it's hard to say. People are worried about Dragon Quest. They're just down. Yeah, Dragon Quest, nothing. I feel very doubtful. Like, maybe the minorest of Dragon Quest spin-offs got canceled, right? But, like, anything that's, like, remotely considered mainline Dragon Quest or, like, part of, like, the next big Dragon Quest thing getting canceled, I think that's, like, out of the question. The next, like, big Final Fantasy thing getting canceled, like, probably out of the question. Like, I think that's, like, if it's, like, Stranger of Paradise, like, 2 or something like that, I don't think that... I don't think that's getting greenlit. But if it's like Tactics remaster, then yeah, that's probably still going through. I don't think you have to worry about that. Yeah, money wise, I think 2 would have been better, but pacing wise, I don't know. It would have been different for sure. It's really hard. It's really hard to say, because it would have been structured differently. I do think that you could have done Midgar, like all of Midgar, in like 10 hours though. If you didn't expand, and pad out some of the scope of it, I feel like you could have done Midgar. Yeah, Midgar could have been pretty short, I feel like. I feel like 2 parts would have been the way for that, but that's neither here nor there now, because we're already kind of here now. So I do think though that for sure the multi-part remake thing is probably never going to be done again. Like, I don't think they're ever going to do that again as a result of what's happened here for sure. But that's good, because I don't think anyone really wants a multi-part remake of anything. So maybe. Actually, I know some of you would want a multi-part FF6, but I don't think that's going to happen at this point. Dragon Quest stuff will not get canceled. Their Pokemon Go stuff exclusive to Japan makes them over $2 billion in revenue. Yeah. There's no way. Dragon Quest nothing is getting canceled. That's like, yeah. Like I said, only if it's like the most obscure experimental Dragon Quest like spin-off, I think that might get canceled or might have been. But like anything that is like a main feature of Dragon Quest is not being touched. I can promise you guys that. I think that's like, yeah, they're not touching that. That's safe money, dude. That's a check. They know that's a check. Again, it's really more like a Various Day Life 2, or like a fucking Harvestella 2, or like a something like that. Those types of things were probably canceled for sure. Now there probably was a good game in there that was probably like, that's not happening. But so yeah, it is a tough situation, but I don't know if you talked about it, but I saw how much they lost was still less than something like Spider-Man 2. Wait, how much who lost was still less than something like Spider-Man 2? I'm kind of interested. I think someone else mentioned that too. If you could bring that back up for me, or if you could link me to that, that would be great. Octopath should be. I think Octopath would be safe. I think Octopath's okay. Wait, actually, I'm still on. Is it on the same thread I was on, or was it something else? Anyway, if you can link me to that, that would be cool. FF17 got canceled. That would be no. I don't think we'll ever get to that point. I think that like the worst thing that would ever happen to Final Fantasy would not be it being canceled, because I don't think FF would ever be canceled. even if like FF is like bombing, I think that like the worst thing that would happen to FF is that it would get downgraded away from like AAA status to like AA status, but actually I don't even think that'd be bad. Chat, I broke my fan. I broke my fan, chat. I don't know how I did it. I was trying to turn it. It's gone. It's gone. Rest in peace. I'ma just be hot as ball. It's so fucking hot, guys. I fucking hate Texas. It's like, what the fuck, man? It's like, it's to the point of where I probably need to shower before I go to the gym. I hate this shit. I can't keep living like this. I can't keep living like this, guys. Ah, it's so hot. It's 81, which isn't that bad right now, but like it's still kind of hot in my house. Maybe I'll drop the AC. Oh, actually, hold on. Let me see if I can just drop the AC a little bit. Okay. Okay. That works. We'll worry about. That's 81. Yeah, 81 Fahrenheit, by the way. Not Celsius, obviously. But it'll be 81 Celsius later in Texas. Not to worry. It'll get there. Anyway. What the fuck were we talking about? Something about Spider-Man 2 that was really interesting on Twitch chat. So they lost $140 million converted from yen, and $315 million from Insomniac League was the cost of Spider-Man 2. Oh, damn, that's like canceling Spider-Man 2. Jesus. I'm split on what. Oh, first of all, thank you, Josh Z, for the super chat. I'm split on whether 7 would have been better without parts because there are so many good character interactions that I think they would have to sacrifice, and I could not imagine not having it. I know. It's really tough. It's really tough because a lot of the new moments and the new stuff is really good. So I don't know, but I do think that like I said, like as an artist, I would say 3 parts. As a businessman, I would say 2. Knowing what I know. That's the hard part about making games though, right? Is because what the businessman says and what the art man says. Like in order to make games peak, you have to make the businessman and the art man shake hands on something, basically. They have to agree on like what's happening. And that's difficult to do because what's good for business isn't usually good for art. And what's good for art isn't usually good for business. Right? So what do? How do you make those two things meet in the center of the Venn diagram? It's tough. It's really tough. I feel like FF7 trilogy is like Mass Effect trilogy. Each part has different focus in the narrative and presentation. Like ME1 is focused on setting world, ME2 is mainly about the characters, and ME3 is about the conclusion to it all. Right. It's really hard because who knows if they really knew what Rebirth was going to be when they made Remake. I know the director took a lot of. I mean, I think they had like a loose idea, but I think that they also mostly played it by ear as well. Remake went through development hell to be fair. The way it was expanded wasn't executed as well as it could have been. IMO 3 parts would have been fine if they didn't cut stuff or had plans instead of yeah. I mean, there has been definitely filler. I think you could have made the Midgar chapter like 10 hours, like if you really wanted to. Because the opening of Midgar in the OG game is like 4 or 5, right? And so it would have had, it wouldn't really have the pacing of Remake for sure, but it would have been cut down by quite a large margin. So, but I get it though too, because making Midgar alone was very expensive, right? Like Midgar is not a cheap city to make. Cities like Midgar are very fucking expensive to make. So, yeah. But anyway, yeah, but that's also the nature of parts too. Like that's the nature of parts. And so that's why it doesn't surprise me that 16 did better than Rebirth, is because 16 was something that people could just pick up and buy and play right then and there. And there wasn't any, you didn't have to play Remake, and you certainly didn't have to play OG. And I do think that the narrative design of Re-Trilogy also definitely probably didn't help it tremendously, right? Because the narrative of it being this kind of rebuild sequel type thing, whatever you want to call it, kind of calling upon knowledge of previous Final Fantasies, which isn't terrible necessarily, but I think kind of one of the issues that I see with it is that whenever I see someone on the TL being like, I'm going to start with Final Fantasy VII Remake, a lot of people being like, no, you need to go play the OG. Right? A lot of people will like divert you away from getting into Re-Trilogy to like go play like years worth of old games. And that's tough. I started with Remake, no shame here. Right, I think it's perfectly fine to start with it. But I think that like the mentality that it's set though in people is that you need to direct people to the OG first, or to have familiarity with it. I've heard it called gatekeeping. I don't know if it's not gatekeeping. I don't think that's gatekeeping, because the thing about it that differentiates it from gatekeeping is no one's saying that like, oh, you don't deserve to get it, but it's just like, it's basically people saying that like you won't enjoy it as much, and they're trying to give you the path that they think will lead you to the optimal amount of enjoyment. So I wouldn't call it gatekeeping. They're trying to help you. DJ Amp, thank you for the $10 super chat. I think they could have just done Remake and added compilation elements, which it seems like they want to do anyway. The timeline elements seem like subversion for its own sake, right? Well, I think the new elements that are there because they're there because you have to keep people interested long term, right? Because if you don't have the sequel elements, then people will get bored of it. That's like Kitase's fear. He was like, well, if I don't have the sequel elements in here, people will get bored. And yeah. No one is saying you're not allowed. It's just advice. Right. Exactly. So that's why I would differentiate it from gatekeeping. But it does inadvertently put up a barrier for people whenever like whenever people say, oh, you won't get it because you didn't play this game from like 25 years ago, so it's not going to hit for you, right? Well, now it's like, okay, well, now I feel demotivated to to play it, right? Whereas, and a big difference I think between that and The Witcher 3 is people will tell you like, just start with 3. Right? Because how would Witcher 3 sales have been if the discourse around The Witcher 3 was that you couldn't start with The Witcher 3, right? Like, would it have sold like, an 8-digit number like it has now? I feel like it wouldn't have, right? Like The Witcher 3 it's something absurd, like 50 million units or something crazy like that. And then like The Witcher 2 is like way less. 27 years now. Sorry. Playing Re-Trilogy before OG is actively worse for the story is absolutely developed as a sequel, and for fans of the original in mind with how current the new plot relies you having additional info from prior games. Yeah, I mean that's kind of that's a huge barrier, I think, for it. So, and then on top of that, you have different parts. So, yeah, Remedy kind of has that issue as well. Oh, you want to play Alan Wake 2? Then fans proclaim you need to play Alan Wake American Nightmare, Control DLCs to get to the Remedyverse saga. Yeah, that's the thing too, right? Like, that even kind of tripped me up, right? Because I was going to go play Alan Wake 2. In fact, I already bought Alan Wake 2. And then whenever I tell people, oh, okay, I think I'm going to start Alan Wake 2 now, people will be like, you're going to play Alan Wake 2 when you haven't played Alan Wake American Nightmare, Controls, and the DLC. Yeah, right? Like, so I think that does like affect people. My philosophy, straight up, guys, is like this. Start with the thing that interests you and then go down the rabbit hole. I started Dragon Ball Z at the Cell Saga. Right? And I thought it was the coolest fucking thing ever, which made me go back all the way to Dragon Ball. Which actually, no. What happened was I saw the Cell Saga first, and then I went back to the start of Dragon Ball Z, and then I watched all of Dragon Ball Z, and then I went back to Dragon Ball, and then I watched all of Dragon Ball. And then after watching all of Dragon Ball, I watched GT and then Super, etc. Right? So it's like, yeah. Good point. I started DBZ at the Raditz Saga and then watched D. Right, exact. Actually, definitively speaking, most people globally started Dragon Ball at Z. Right? Most people objectively, globally, started Dragon Ball after the, like, basically, how long is Dragon Ball? It's like 200 episodes. So they skipped the first 200 episodes. They just skipped immediately to the part where Goku, you're an alien. Without even like the context of why that like even mattered, right? Like if you had the context of Dragon Ball, like that was a pretty big reveal, but you didn't. It was just like they kind of started at one of the biggest reveals in the entire series, right? So yeah. What all of this is to say, chat, is that if you want to help your favorite franchises and someone wants to start, if they want to start on like a Dragon 8 or Cold Steel 4 or KH4 or Rebirth, you should let them. Let them do it. Let them fucking do it. I don't care if you personally think they should start at the beginning and have a similar experience with it that you did. You should let them start with the thing that interests them. I'm going to let as many people as possible hop on KH4. Yeah, please. Because that's how it grows. That's how it gets bigger, dude. When people are like, no, you need to go play like 5 PS2 games, then I will let you play KH4. You won't get it, bro. Like my reaction to that is that like I'm not getting into that. I'm not bothering. I'm not gonna bother with that because my reaction to that is I don't want to do that much homework. That sucks. Like I don't want to go play like 10 games to just get into one thing that I'm interested in. I just want to play the thing that interested me. You can start at Infinite Wealth. They explain everything to you. You just have to read a lot. And that's another thing too, right? Is that you don't have to understand everything. I think that's like a common like misconception that people have, is that a lot of times you can just start something and it can be like really cool and interesting to you, and then you can just like get into it from there. Do you think people should be allowed to story skip and play Dawn Trail immediately? If Dawn Trail is the thing that interests you and like you get like way into it, then yeah, I would say that's fine. Because here is the thing though too, right? The new game plus feature in 14 will allow you to go back and experience all the expansions as you want. That's why I say, Tyler, what's up, man? That's why I say actually, like, if a Realm Reborn is chugging so bad for you and you cannot finish it, then I actually say you should story skip to Heaven's Word. Actually, like, no joke. Like, I'm not like one of those people that is like, oh no, don't skip. I'm like, dude, if you're gonna quit the game and you just really want to get to the part so bad, I'm like, story skip to Heaven's Word. And if you love Heaven's Word and you love the game, like going forward from Heaven's Word, then go back. Go back and experience A Realm Reborn with New Game Plus. I don't think that it's necessary to experience a story in order and have every single detail. Right? Like, for me, you can just give a detail like Ishtola is blind. And I'll be like, whoa, how did Ishtola become blind? That's really interesting, right? If I'm interested in the current story, I'd be like, oh, she's blind? Like, what happened to make her blind? And then I want to go back. I don't need to know that in a linear way, personally speaking. Missed, thank you for the 500 bits. Okay. This is super applicable to 14. So I told a friend who was invested, hey, the beginning of 14 is a lot, so don't be afraid to skip because you won't be playing in-game and you'll be putting a great number of hours not even really playing the game. He didn't want to skip and he wanted to go through it. He came back and said, well, the story is good. The combat is so slow. It's too slow. Bro, I told you about the combat. Yeah. I feel like, well, there's a huge problem in 14 as well, where as 14 has gotten bigger, the early level combat is so fucking boring that it's almost unbearable. I think whenever I'm doing like gameplay that's under level 70, I'm so bored. Like, it's so boring, right? Like when you're doing stuff that's under like basically like Stormblood and before, like if it's before Stormblood, it gets like really slow and really hard to get into. 14 doesn't like become fun as a game until like Stormblood to me. Like that's when combat actually clicks. Like in terms of like how the game is set up now anyway. Stormblood is actually like when it kind of kicks into gear when you get to like level 70. That's when it's like fun. Yeah, leveling roulette is really bad because of this. Right. You ever get like anytime like you get like a Realm Reborn stuff, like you immediately like it's like, oh my god, this is so or you get like Heavensward stuff. It's just like because the rotation is just so bare minimum and the cooldown speed is also really high. I mean 14 kind of has like a high cool like GCD anyway, so having 4 buttons is funny. Yeah, you press those same 4 buttons in a row and then that's it. I hope the next FF MMO is action. Is that a hot take? Because jobs have been constantly reworked and the ever-increasing slew of quality of life stuff, like removing aggro combat and TP as a resource management, low-level combat has suffered a lot. It used to be engaging, but now most of the jobs just do not work under level 70. It's a major issue at 14 at the moment and needs a complete rework of when you get skills ready. Like some jobs have no AoE until level 45. Yeah. Yeah, that's the problem. Very well said, Crossy. yeah, it worked great like when it first came out. And then the problem is that like, you know, they shift stuff over for the sake of the new expansion, but then they F over everyone. They F over everything in like the lower levels, and then it ends up so that like lower level combat becomes like intolerable because it is so slow and you have no skills. And it's like, what do you do? Can we talk about CBU3 CS3? Yeah, we can. Sure. We'll pull up my boy Genki's tweet. You guys give Genki a follow for me. He's a great guy. You guys have probably seen his stuff in my videos, but he's always good at posting all the news, translates a bunch of stuff. So if you can, give my boy a follow. But this is something that recently happened. Oh my god, Final Fantasy Union, hello. We're gonna be doing a chat with Daryl pretty soon, guys. That's been planned for a while. We keep moving it back. I don't know. Part of me wants to do it after the investor report is up, but that's gonna be our next chat. Hopefully, it's gonna be with Daryl from Final Fantasy Union. So I hope you guys look forward to that. And so this is the new thing that's happening here, is that the creative business units, their namesakes are no more. They are now known as creative studios. I don't know how I feel about that. Square Enix have changed their studio naming system from Creative Business Unit to Creative Studio. CPU 3 is now called Creative Studio 3. Yoshi P is now Creative Studio 3 Head instead of CPU 3 General Manager. This comes as part of Square Enix's pipeline changes. Yeah, I don't know. Nah, CPU 3 had soul. I wonder, could they have to rework the logo, right? So this now has to say Creative Studio 3 instead of Creative Business Unit 3. I guess Creative Studio sounds... Not gonna lie, this didn't need to be news, but I mean, I'm so used to calling them CPU 3 that it's going to take a very long time before I actually start calling them Creative Studio 3. Business unit always sounded awkward as hell. At least they're called studios now. Yeah, I mean, it sounded almost like, it sounded too formal, right? But I mean, of course, this is like, it's Japan we're talking about here, but it's so formal. It's so like, it's creative business unit. Yes. They are a business unit of creativity. So very formal, very polite way of describing what they do. They are creative. They are a business unit. They're a creative business unit, in fact. Now they're a creative studio. I feel like they should just give them names, right? Like Team Phoenix or something like that. Like, I feel like that would be cooler, right? Like if they actually had like actual names. Also, like why is CPU 3 the only one that has a logo? That's always been interesting to me. Like, only CPU 3 has a logo. That being said, CPU is still better than like, they used to just call them like, actually they used to just call them like business units. But then they added the word creative on there. Or no, they call them business divisions. Sorry, yeah, that's right. They call them business divisions. Which actually, yeah, like, I mean, business division is also like a really like weird name. Perhaps a name like Luminous. That's true. Like Luminous was like the only one that got their name, but I guess even before that they were BD2 mostly. BD2. I guess. But yeah, that's weird. BD2 then became its own studio, became Luminous. And now Luminous became no more. Rest in peace. I'm just glad that everyone from Luminous got to keep their job. I think that's actually pretty cool. That Square Enix just didn't lay them all off. Because to be honest with you, I do feel like most companies in that situation, that just would have been straight up layoffs, like after Forspoken. Like everyone would have lost their job. So I do think it's kind of cool that like that everyone got to keep their job and that there weren't mass layoffs from that. I think that's very good. Team Asano is a more affectionate name. They're still technically Business Division 11 existing within CBU2. Oh, okay. That's cool. But I like that they, even then, like the fact that they have like, even if it's an affectionate name, that they still get referred to something that's not just like, you know, like basically like describing it in such like a formal way, you know? Like if we had, like, I don't know, if they called this like Team Yoshida, that'd be cool. Or Phoenix Studio. Do you think we'll have QuickTime events added to 7 Remake Part 3 during cinematic boss fights? Nah, I don't think they should. I mean, it wouldn't be impossible, but I kind of don't like cinematic boss fights. Is that a like is that a bad thing to say? Like, I don't, the boss fight is good when the mechanics are good. Not when it's cinematic and like there's QTEs and shit, dude. Why not both? Because oftentimes it's not both. Oftentimes it's so not both. Oftentimes it's either a cinematic boss fight or a like mechanical boss. Anyway, I don't mind when there's like, you know, cinematics in the boss fight, like in like the 7 re-trilogy, for example, which they make all their boss fights like really cinematic and stuff, but like um it has to be a mechanically good fight and not like a QTE like cutscene kind of on rails boss fight, because anything like that is like a huge ass waste of my time. I give you a perfect example, right? Um like Final Fantasy 15 and like some of like the Titan and Leviathan fights in like 15 were like there's a couple of QTEs and then like it basically tells you like to hold square as like Titan's foot comes down. You get to go Super Saiyan during Leviathan's fight, but you don't actually get to do anything while you're like Super Saiyan Noctis. You just kind of you just kind of like blow him up. So, yeah, if we're talking about like that, I mean, just to make clear distinction about like how I'm defining like cinematic fight versus like something that I feel like is actually like mechanical, right? When you look at games like Stellar Blade and Elden Ring, do boss fights have mechanics to them though? They're all just attack patterns. I would say that attack patterns are mechanics depending on the battle system, and in their case, yes, I would say that that their mechanics. Yeah. Attacks and pattern recognition are part of mechanics. Yeah, I mean, definitively, it's part of mechanics, right? It's not like it has to have like a special, unique mechanic for the boss, like that only exists for the boss. It's just it's literally just attack patterns and yeah, knowing how to deal with certain attacks and yeah. Do you think that part three will sell less than Rebirth? I mean, yeah, because that's how multi-part series work. In general, right? Like part one sells the most, and then part two sells a little bit less than part one, and then yeah. I forgot like 80% of FF15 by this point. You can get through all of FF15 in like 15 hours, by the way, if you just like go straight through the story and you don't do a single side quest. Like you blow through the whole thing. Like a 15-hour game. I actually didn't know that until recently. Every FF14 boss fight is literally just patterns, and I'd love to see you say savages and ultimate fights don't have mechanics. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Step into a single ultimate and it's just patterns. And you'll definitely not say that is doesn't have mechanics. That's for sure, Thalvik. I agree 100%. So platinum people say people saying platinum takes too long. The OG FF7 took 10 to 20 years to play. I mean, and this may come as a surprise to some people. You don't have to platinum the game. You don't have to do everything. Like, I know that like there are some mini games in the main story that people may not want to do, but you don't have to do all of them. You don't have to 100% the game. Do people know that? You can just do all the content you like and then stop playing when you when you run out of stuff that you like. That is how I approach every single game, by the way. Um, if it's not fun and it's optional, I just don't do it. What FF needs is a plot like early 16 that doesn't Annabella itself. But yeah, yeah. I still think about like that demo section of 16 a lot. I think that like despite how I feel about like the later half of 16 story, I love that opening section. Like might actually be like one of my it might actually be my favorite opening actually to a game, because I think that opening section is like so narratively strong, that it's still, despite everything else I feel I felt about how the game story turned out, that like that opening was still probably like my favorite, like overall. I still think that's like an amazing opening. That demo was an amazing vertical slice in general, right? Like I feel like I think Rebirth's a better game, but I don't think Rebirth had a better demo than 16. The lead up all the way to the Gruta fight was great too. Yep, after Benedicta died, that's where that's where things started to get like kind of iffy for me. Because when Benedicta died, I was like, wait, they just killed her? That was it? I was like, there was so much more there that it felt like it was like, wait, why did they just do that? So that was my first kind of like ooh, I don't know, kind of moment with that game story. So FF16 falls off the Bahamut fight is like definitely like the narrative peak like overall though. Like that's like definitely the height of the game for sure. I didn't vibe with Ultima as much. I don't think the idea of Ultima is bad though. I think conceptually Ultima is a good idea. Like when you consider what 16's about thematically. Um, but Ultima in himself is like there just wasn't a thing that really made me grip on to that aspect of the story, like in like a profound way. In fact, I think that that story was really at its strongest when it was stuff like Clive and Hugo screaming at each other, right? I think that like 16 had like the most interesting like human drama, right? Like that's when it was so good. I think that's actually why people were disappointed with Ultima, right? It's because the game was really good when it was like deep in human drama, like when it was like Annabella, when it was like, you know, Clive dealing with the guilt of Joshua, when it was Hugo, when it was you know, facing off against Barnabas, when it was you know, Clive and Joshua DNA digivolving into Ifrit Risen and fighting Bahamut in space and like, you know, the things with Dion. That was when it was like, you know. And then yeah, Ultima takes away from the interpersonal drama and um it doesn't give anything that hooks you in quite as good. So, yeah. And, but I understand thematically why Ultima is part of the story, but there just wasn't anything there to elevate Ultima to the point of where he was as interesting as the human drama element. Hello, Night Sky Prince. Thank you for all your great videos about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. They have been great to watch. Thank you so much. I think what people love about FF stories are the interpersonal connections between the characters. It's why people love 14. Yeah, so this is why I think that like Emmett, Selk, and Sephiroth in particular are like the villains, antagonists that people hold on to like the strongest, right? Even Xenos, like characters like that, people really like that type of thing. Like one of the thing that like it's something that people really love about those because it not only gives like they're not only villains, but then they also have that interpersonal connection between the characters. The annoying part about the human drama is that it's all orchestrated by Ultima. He is always pulling the strings on stuff, and it's all there in the game if people care to see it. But Ultima himself doesn't have the same level of personal drama with Clive. So I get why people are mad on him, but his hands are on everything in that story, which has a big lower lever. I love it. Right, right. Yeah, totally. He is connected to everything, which is good. Um, I'm the biggest Xenos defender. I mean, I am too. I literally have a. Let me see if I can. Do you guys see that at the very top? There's a there's a naked Xenos. Um, there's a shirtless Xenos at the very top, right next to a very lovely artwork of my Warrior of Light. Yeah, you can see Xenos. Um, it was a gift from a friend, but it's a gift that I accepted with open arms. So yeah, I got Xenos up there. Please for the meme show chat the Xenos standing next to this. Is it still? I don't even know if I can find it. Oh wait, it's on Google Images now. Hold on. Let me. Why is it not? I hate this shit. There we go. I'll just. Oh, fuck me. There we go. This is crazy because Sephiroth's like 6'3", bro. And we don't even. Or something crazy like that. So, like, how tall is Xenos? I don't know. I have no idea, but Jesus, man. Like, Sephiroth is not a small guy. So this is pretty confounding, right? Like Xenos has to at least be like Xenos has to be like 7'5" or something. At least, right? Like at least for this to actually even come close to making sense. Do you think that Square will eventually combine all three of Remake's trilogy into one game? No, I think that instead of that, they'll just sell a package of the three games. Midnight Sapphire, hello. Thanks for the tier 1. I have a question. I have an FF7 question. What if Genesis helps Zack get back to the Beagle timeline? Fuck. I actually feel like you might be cooking. Oh shit, I think you might be cooking. Oh fuck. I think that's not a terrible way to like narratively include Genesis without him derailing the story. I think you might be onto something. I'll send that to like Baby Seal's way and see what he thinks about it because I actually don't think that's a bad idea at all. Well, Genesis becomes like I can't remember the lore behind it, but he becomes like a very big deal like within the live stream. So actually, Genesis like helping Zack get to the Beagle timeline is like not even a is not like a how would he even do that? I don't know. I don't know. But I think that like narratively it wouldn't be like it wouldn't not make sense, right? Because that would be like how you conclude Crisis Core definitively, right? Is you have Genesis like showing up. And that would be the epilogue for his story. Genesis is actually not a bad person. His life just got completely ruined by Shinra, right? Yeah. I think after playing Crisis Core Reunion with more media literacy than I had as like a teenager, like I don't think the execution of Genesis's character was like necessarily masterful, but I actually think the idea behind Genesis was like not a bad idea. Staying 88, thank you so much for the tier 1. Like Genesis was kind of cool in a way. Like in the sense that like basically, while everyone else was like laying down and just taking it, in terms of like what Shinra was doing to the world and to them as people, like Genesis stood up. Genesis said, I'm gonna find a cure for, my degradation. I'm gonna fight against um, all the stuff that Shinra is doing. And Genesis, he was willing to do anything. He was like, for his survival. And so ultimately, Genesis was like, Genesis was not a villain, right? Like everyone else, like I guess, like it's really easy to think of Genesis as like, this villain that reads poetry and all this other stuff. And yeah, that's kind of like the way they played him. But the actual thing about Genesis is that like Yeah, the idea behind him and what he stood for was really cool. Um, Wait, if the Minerva Genesis sees at the end of Crisis Core is remake trilogy Aerith in the live stream, right? I mean, that's also not impossible either. Um, I think that Aerith is going to be like this. I think she'll be like a super powerful being. That's kind of what I alluded to, really, with the third secret thing, where I said like, on the podcast with Maximilian Dude, where I said, before the game came out, I was like, if she dies, I won't be surprised. And if she lives, I won't be surprised. So the only way to make me be surprised is to do a third secret thing with Aaron. And then they did the third secret thing at the end of Rebirth. And I was like, okay, I didn't see that coming. So the third secret thing, again, would be like, oh, she becomes like part of like Minerva. Her and like Minerva like assimilate or some shit. Or she is Minerva. She becomes Minerva or something like that. Something wild like that would be like the third thing that is different from like, oh, she died. Because in a way she's no longer, she does still kind of die, right? She loses her human life. But she becomes like this being that, yeah. So and there's still a tragedy in that, but there's also like a beauty in that too, like her having to sacrifice her normal life as a person, but her also ascending as like this kind of goddess too, that ends up helping the party. So yeah, I don't think that's a bad way to go about it, considering what the current story is. I know we're on FF7, but would you like to see from CBU 3 in the future? 14 aside, they've implied they're doing something else. They are doing something else. I don't know if it's FF17. Yoshi P seems to say that it's not. If I'm to give my opinion, I don't know what the next thing they should work on is. I would feel like it would be a new IP. But I don't know. I wouldn't mind seeing them tackle another mainline Final Fantasy again, but I think I don't want them to. I want them to make different decisions than they made with 16. That would be like what I would want them to do, but I would want them to try again for sure. It can be an action game, but if it's going to be a Final Fantasy, I do want it to be hardcore, more so on the RPG side. Like I would want them to course correct the RPG side of things, because I think that 16 just did not have enough RPG in it. And I would want them to make the next game very rooted in RPG-ness. If that makes sense. I think they do some great things with 16. Yeah, I'm sure they're going to reuse that technology. I don't think there's any question. They said they could do some. He said he wanted to do something more, a more systemic open world game with not much story. Yeah, he did mention that before, which tells me that he should make something that isn't an FF, which is fine. I think most of us agree we wanted more RPG from 6. Yeah, so they need to take a good hard look at franchise to get back at their roots, right? Like I think that whatever they do next, I don't want to be having a debate on whether it's an RPG or not with people. I think that's like the only thing I'll say. And anything else they choose to do is fine. Like, I don't know. If they were like, oh, hey, we're going to even do like 16.2 or something insane like that, I would be fine with it. But just make sure that like you go like knee deep into like the RPG side of stuff. Subtext, what's up? I just hope that whatever they do with Era doesn't end up undercutting the long-term impact of the Dream Church Goodbye. I'm a big fan of that scene. Right. Well, I mean, it's kind of hard because, you know, one could even argue that her still being around after her saying goodbye could be an undercut. So I guess it just depends. FF7 Rebirth combat with FF themed classic jobs would be my dream. Oh, I mean, yeah, that's what's great about the ATB system in general that Re-Trilogy has, is that you can change the meta of it a little bit and make it a completely different game, right? Like that same system with jobs, like classic FF jobs or some type of job system, would already fundamentally change it, right? Like to a large degree, right? Like replacing Cloud with a Dragoon or something would make that like a very different battle system while still keeping the thing. And I think that there's two like really important notes on it. One, as I mentioned before many times, is that it is its own genre, and that because it is its own genre, it's Square's own unique thing, right? And so they have basically a complete monopoly over that. You can only get this type of combat from us, and you can say that that's Final Fantasy core gameplay, you know, and that's huge. The other thing is that it's also something that people still feel is identifiably Final Fantasy. And because of that, you don't have to have, every time you put out a new Final Fantasy game, you know, you don't have to like look at the battle system and we have these arguments on whether the game is Final Fantasy enough or not. We can say it's got the Final Fantasy ATB system, right? Which I actually think counterintuitively allows us to skip the discourse on whether something is FF enough or not. If that makes sense. Because if we can define the thing, then, you know, we can say that, yeah, it's the thing. So I would like a Genshin Impact like FF, since they're already doing gacha anyways with 7, as long as it has all the necessary elements like Breath of the Wild with many good combats. I do not trust Square Enix to make anything like that. I do not think they could do it, if I'm bluntly honest. Primarily because Genshin Impact was like incredibly expensive game to make, but like, yeah. So it'd be really high risk to make an FF game like that. But then also too, I don't think Square Enix would like, oof. Yeah, I don't know if I would. Yeah. Crossy in Twitch chat says that always happens, Night Skies Prince, because there is no collective FF fandom. We gotta stop telling ourselves this lie. There's specific FF fans for FF games, far less of us general. Yeah, I mean, yeah, for sure. For sure. But also too, like, you know, that's kind of like that's kind of what was like bound to happen post 10, especially, right? When the style of the games really changed, and each game ended up playing extremely different. And yeah, bro is gassing up 16 before so hard before launch. I mean, yeah, I mean that's the thing, right? Is that I do this thing where I give the developers my faith, and then I play the game, and then I evaluate it. After I played it, I give you know, my feedback, my thoughts on it. So yeah, every game that I'm excited for, I'm always going to give my full faith. I'm going to always I'm gonna always allow the developer, especially ones that I trust, to fulfill a vision that they have. And yeah, and then afterwards, I'll give, my feedback. So I think that, being negative or cynical before a game releases is just so lame to me, right? Like, I think that, like, you should always give developers your best faith. I mean, obviously there's situations like microtransactions and other things where if they try to, but yeah, give them your trust, give them the benefit of the doubt. And so yeah, when 17 comes out, I'm gonna give my I'm going to give them my trust again, and I'm going to let them see what they can make, and when it comes out, I'll let you know how I feel about it. Yeah, but I'm not gonna I never see someone making something, and maybe I agree or disagree with some of the choices before I played it, but you'll never see me be like, oh, this thing is going to be shit before it even releases, right? Like, those of you who follow me for years, can you really tell a time when I was like, this game is going to be shit before it comes out? And not even just with Final Fantasy. Like, can you name any game that I was ever like, this is absolutely going to be shit before it launches? I don't think you can. And that's because I've always made conscious awareness. You even gave Stranger of Paradise a chance? Yeah, and I hate that game. I do. Yeah. Yeah. I give everything a chance. Forspoken? Nuh-uh. I was not negative on Forspoken at all pre-release. Nuh-uh. I was hyped on Forspoken pre-release. In fact, I really wanted Forspoken to do well. Because it was a new IP for Square, and I was like, oh hey, we're finally gonna have like a black protagonist in like a AAA game. And then the game came out. Yeah, and then that didn't work out too well, unfortunately. So it's like, oh, that's too bad. So anyway, I mean, that's just a general thing. That's a general thing, and I recommend everyone have that mindset. I don't think we should shoot developers down before the game comes out. I think once a game comes out, and you played it, I know some of you motherfuckers just be criticizing stuff based on trailers and what other people are saying, or some manifesto that you have. But if the game comes out and you played it, then I think, you have room for criticism, right? Especially if you spent $70 on this. The way that people on Twitter, especially act, if you spent $70 on something and you can't voice, your opinion on it, how people act about that stuff. I think it's kind of ridiculous. But I just strictly believe that before, a game comes out, that if you're like already shitting on it before you've given it a chance, before you've seen what the developers, have done. I mean, like I said, there are some exceptions where things are looking just bad. And it's like, this is not a good situation. Yeah, there's exceptions to every rule. But I do think that, for the most part, you should be fair to everything before it comes out. So, and not just be negative on it. So that's a general rule for life. Do not judge what you do not know. How long do you think 17 will be? Do you think it'll be how long will it be till 17? In terms of years and stuff? Will it be CPU 3 or 1? Dawn Trail is almost out, so it's likely to be CPU 3, right? I actually feel this is based on nothing except for like one Yoshi P quote and like the fact that it was revealed to me in a dream by God. Those are the only two things. Those are the only two things that I have as evidence for this. I think it'll be like a new team. I think it'll be like a new team, actually, like straight up, like a new team. Okay, so here's why I think it'll be a new team. I think it'll be a new team because Yoshi P said that he wants to see some brand new younger guys work on it on the next Final Fantasy. And that's like not like the old guard, right? So he wants to see completely new guys take on FF17. And I think that that's actually happening. So I think that they have probably like, yeah, I think that they have a couple of guys that are like working on a like an idea for FF17. I think the FF17 is a long way away. Like a long ways away. And I think especially too, after 16 and Rebirth, they're really evaluating what they should do. And as much as people claim on a certain website, Twitter, you know, that every FF is like kind of like developed in isolation and isn't based on feedback from the last, that's like entirely untrue, by the way. Like every FF actually is developed based on feedback from the last. Almost all of them. They do different things, but they always take in consideration of what the last... I mean, FF8 was based on feedback from FF7 being too depressing. So Nojima said that he wrote a story that was less depressing than FF8. So yeah, it's not developed in a void or anything like that. It's not like they don't like think about like FF15, like one of the primary reasons it's open world is because people said they didn't like how linear 13 was. So yeah, the new thing will always be based on what the last thing was. 16 was made based on feedback from FF15. Yeah, it's why they hired Ryota Suzuki, right? Because people complained about the combat in 15 so bad. It's why 16 wasn't open world. It's because you know, at the time they felt like they couldn't do a good open world, right? Based on feedback from 15. So 16 was heavily, you know, influenced by feedback from 15. So yeah, I mean, these aren't made in isolation. They do something different every time. They may have been too responsive. I think that they can be too responsive for sure. Despite my complaints at 16, I feel like the series has shaped up a lot since 13, personally. And of course, Re-Trilogy knocks it out of the park. Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah. So, it's not whatever. I think that they are looking at 16 and Rebirth right now, and they are seeing what people like and dislike about both of those games. And I think that they are like really deciding on what they should do. And I think that they're taking their time a bit with this one. So I actually think that 17 is going to be... I think 17 is like not far along, actually. I don't think we'll see 17 until after part 3 of Remake. I think that 17 is that far away. So 13 trilogy isn't as bad as people think. The 7th console generation was a weird time for JRPGs on home consoles. Handhelds thrive though. I think 13.2 is really good. I think that's the one that I feel like actually if they had come out with 13 and 13 had like all the features of 13.2. I think that's like another thing too. Like going back to like the Ultima situation is that Orphan was like a worse Ultima. Like Ultima is definitely better than Orphan. The Orphan was probably like the worst antagonist in like in FF. If I'm like to be strictly honest, I think it like legit doesn't get worse than Orphan. I don't think that they've ever come up with anything worse than Orphan. I feel like that was like the most like stakes removed. Nobody cares. Orphan did have good music. That's true, but I think that nobody thought about Orphan, right? Like Orphan was not like deep to anyone. I don't think. But Caius was though, right? So um you like Space Pope? You like Barthandelus? I didn't really like Barthandelus either. I thought that Barthandelus and Orphan together were just like really, yeah. They didn't do it for me. Caius though, Caius did it for me. Like Caius Ballot was a good villain. Like if you would have had Final Fantasy 13, but you would have had a villain like Caius at the end of it, I think the reception of that game story would have been so much better. Then like you get to the end and it's like Orphan. You just fight like a little machine baby thing. um yeah, so I don't know. I feel like that would have worked out better. Yeah, Vayne was pretty good too. Sid would have been the Caius of 13-1. Sid had so much wasted potential in that. I know. I know. He was one hell of a boss fight though. I think the boss fights in 13 were like the boss fights in 13 were the highlight of that game to me. In a way, I kind of think that like 13 and 16 kind of have a similar problem for me personally, where it's like whenever I was in a boss fight in those games, I was like, this game fucks. It's like I love this shit. And then whenever I was not in a boss fight, I was like, oh my fucking god, this shit is so boring. um yeah, so because the boss fights in those games like really bought out the system and really made the system in both of those games really fun. And then like when I wasn't in a boss fight, like it like you know, it just kind of felt like there wasn't much going on in terms of the gameplay. The moment to moment stuff wasn't cool. So, but I think the boss fights again in 16 and 13 were fun. They just need to figure out what to do with the rest of the gameplay loop. That isn't just the boss fight, right? Because I think like when you got to like the boss fights in 13, especially like you'd realize like the Sid Reigns boss fight in 13, you'd be like, Command Synergy battle system is actually genius, right? Like when it's actually pushed to the limits and like you're fighting those types of boss fights, or you're doing like Barthandelus, it's pretty cool. Like that's when I was like, oh, this battle system is actually better than people give it credit for. But then like when you're in like regular battles, it'll just feel and I know that could be said of all like Final Fantasy games, but I think that especially in 13, like battles would drag on for a little bit longer than they would in like other games. Okay, I think that is where we're going to end the stream today. I'll probably pick back up with another stream sometime this week, actually, if you guys look forward to that. If you're on Twitch, let's raid Very Finny. We'll do that. And yeah, I'm going to go to the gym. I love you guys. We'll be back really soon.